There we go. All right, everybody, happy New Year.
Is
I'm
that-
gonna
This
call.
person needs a computer.
Oh, I thought I said, is he coming? And you guys said no, and so I was
Nobody
moving.
said
No.
no.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. You're up and running.
I thought I heard.
I am not here for the meeting because, Tim's taking over.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you, Christiane.
I'm gonna call this meeting to order. Happy New Year, everybody. To anyone in the public with us today, please sign in so Ashley can record everyone's attendance. And indicate if you are interested in making any public comment. For the folks on the line, if you could just put your full name, in the chat, just so we could record that, I would really appreciate that. Just so we capture everyone's attendance here. We can't really capture it unless we have a good list. So with that being said, is there any public comment? Any public comment on the line?
There's one on the answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please.
My name is Edward Abbott. I'm a partner at Labor Cost Management, a management consulting firm based in Troy, New York, and I'm a subject matter expert on labor and employment laws and regulations. Thank you for allowing me the opportunities. On December 26, 2024, at 10:05 a.m., Lori Dreyer, a librarian, was physically assaulted by a patron at the library. This patron had been previously banned from the library, threatening another patron. This is unfortunately not an isolated incident. There have been multiple instances of violent behavior at this library, and the lack of action from this board is deeply concerning. The board is aware of these recurring incidents of violence, yet no meaningful steps have been taken to address them. This inaction demonstrates a serious lack of concern for the safety and well-being of library staff. While I'm grateful that no one has sustained serious injuries to me, allowing staff to be subjected to ongoing assaults is unacceptable and a significant failure in your duty of care. I'm deeply concerned about this situation, particularly regarding the board's response or lack thereof. I'm not directing my anger towards the individual who assaulted Ms. Dreyer, but rather towards this board's failure to adequately address this critical issue. When I requested copies of required reports regarding workplace violence, I was surprised to learn that these reports do not exist. I also learned that no board member contacted Ms. Dreyer to inquire about her well-being after the incident. I have witnessed board members interact with Ms. Dreyer socially over trivial matters, but the assault of an employee should have warranted immediate and direct concern. How would any of you feel if a loved one was assaulted at work and those in charge did nothing? I cannot imagine that this indifference would be tolerated within your own families. New York state law mandates that employers provide a safe working environment for their employees, free from recognized threats that could cause serious harm. This includes taking reasonable steps to prevent and address workplace violence. Your continued inaction not only creates a dangerous environment for staff, but also exposes the board to significant legal and reputational risks, both as an organization and individually. Failing to implement adequate security measures, conduct proper risk assessments, and respond effectively to incidents of violence can result in legal action, fines from regulatory agencies like OSHA, and serious damage to the library's reputation. Furthermore, failing to maintain required records related to workplace incidents is a violation of the law. I urge this board to take immediate action to address this critical safety issue. This includes conducting a thorough workplace violence risk assessment, implementing appropriate security measures to protect staff, developing and implementing clear protocols for responding to and reporting incidents of violence, providing staff with adequate training on de-escalation techniques and workplace violence prevention. The safety and well-being of library staff should be a top priority for this board. I trust that you will take the necessary steps to ensure a safe and secure working environment for all employees. In closing, please understand that the action items mentioned earlier are not mere suggestions. They represent the absolute minimum actions required for you to comply with a law that's been in effect for nearly 15 years. I would like to remind you that the ultimate responsibility for the well-being of your staff rests not with the administration, but with you, the members of this board. The current current state of noncompliance and the demonstrated indifference, to even the most basic safety measures for library staff, indicate a systemic failure in your oversight responsibilities. It is with all sincerity that I urge you to take this warning seriously. You have an opportunity to address this issue proactively before it escalates into a more significant problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Any comment?
No, we can save that for later, just to keep the conduct going.
Do we have a copy of the letter that Edward read?
Excuse me, what letter?
Do we have a copy
Can
of
we get
Edward's
a,
letter?
can we get a copy of?
Yeah.
Nice.
I do have a copy of that, so I can provide that to the board. Okay, no,
Thank you.
you're welcome, so.
All right, do we have any additional public comment at this time? All right, or none, we'll move down the agenda. We don't really have a treasurer's report, but approval of the expenditures.
Yes, the Finance Committee has recommended to the board that they approve the bills that were submitted for payment. So I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Right.
Motion
Sorry.
carries.
Thank you.
All right, in our consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes of our last board meeting held December 10th, 2024. We have the approval of the minutes of a special board meeting held on December 18th, 2024. We have an admin committee report, building committee report, average committee report, an election committee report, an Upper Hudson report, and a January president's report.
I've submitted Finance Committee minutes, but they're not here. I may not have submitted them correctly or
If they're not here, we'll tack them on to February's to make sure they're on the record for now, but thank you. Know that.
Did Evan make it in?
Yes.
Can we also discuss the meetings that we had discussed in the finance meeting? One of them would be for the full board at this point in time, under the treasurer's report and approval of expenditures. So we had discussed a date for Finance 101 provided by Judith Wines of UHLS, which is for everybody, not just for members of the Finance Committee. It's for the full board and also for the director. A date was selected at January 29th to start at 5:45. In respect to your schedule, is that's the time you can make?
I'm available.
Um,
The other day. Is that,
We can
sorry,
discuss the
when was
timing.
the date offered just now?
Right.
Okay.
We can discuss the timing of sorry, I was gonna say education 101, financial education 101. We can take that offline. We don't need to work out the logistics right now. Thank you, Marie. I so move that we adopt the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Section.
All in favor?
All right.
And what about the other motion that,
Would you like to make the motion now?
so, another motion that was made within the Finance Committee meeting was to add an item to the routine bills that can be paid prior to approval by the board. And that was for writers and speakers, in parentheses, programs, to enable payment on a timely basis for those people who are providing the program services. So that particular category was added to the routine bills. And the Finance Committee recommended to the board that they be paid or be approved. So I so move. Alex,
All in favor?
No, is there a second? Okay.
All in favor?
Done.
Thank you, Maureen. All right, we're gonna move on to our regular agenda. Brief background, we have Sam Wise with Clarity HR Services. Tim identified Clarity HR Services as an HR service provider that we could contract with for our dire HR needs at the Shrike Public Library. Sam, thank you so much for joining us. I give you the floor now.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. As I'm guessing that was the voice of Alex that was
Sorry.
speaking. Yeah. So as Alex said, I'm a HR consultant here in, we're over in Albany, but we work with a number of employers in the capital region to provide HR support. Typically what we find our client bases is organizations that are either too small to fully budget wise have a full-time HR person on site, but we also work with organizations that have HR in place, and we're providing kind of ad hoc support or project-based support. So we work pretty full-scale comprehensive HR. Typically, it's easier for me to talk about what we don't do. What we don't do is insurance administration. We don't do payroll administration, and we don't do large scale recruiting. Everything else, when it comes to HR support, we're able to do that. Chiefly, what we find with a lot of clients that we can provide support on is with compliance issues. So often we'll start with an audit to identify any areas of concern and look at how we can support timely addressing of those problems. And then we'll look at procedures to help HR practices run smoothly, to make sure that all internal stakeholders understand what their responsibilities are. For Tim, we'd be providing some support in setting up processes to help him be compliant with those HR pieces, and then we can act in a long-term relationship as your kind of chief HR officer. So making sure that you've got someone there to provide expert guidance, to provide support for things like leave management, for any kind of employee related issues that come up, to make sure that there's someone ensuring checks and balances. We work closely with our client's employment counsel to make sure that we're not providing legal advice, and that we're working consistently with our clients' expectations with regard to those risk analyses, and whatever your guidance is from employment counsel. So that's kind of a broad overview of what we do, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, or provide any additional context that you might request.
Thank you so much, Sam. Does anyone have any questions for Sam?
Sorry, have we seen the actual proposal? Do we have that?
I am having it reviewed with council.
And is that something that we would put eyes on just to see the full scope?
It can be provided. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And that's not currently budgeted in this year, but, okay.
No, That is correct. It is not budgeted.
But with the business manager role and everything else.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And also we'll be looking at the 2025 budget to see whether it requires revision with what we know now.
Okay, perfect. So that'll be in what we're going to do later. Sorry, Sam, it's not necessarily related to you, but.
No, you're okay. You're okay. I can
I'm sure you
also,
care
yeah.
about getting paid.
Yes, sure. No, I love that. I love that. We, just to give you kind of some additional context as you're kind of thinking about that budget piece, we don't work off of a retainer in the way that some companies do. So you're not paying a regular monthly fee. We bill based on services rendered. And so in that, we can be sort of as budget friendly as needed if we have sort of, you'd like to keep monthly costs under a certain threshold. That's certainly something that we can work with. Part of what Tim and I have talked about is really looking at priorities, so that we're getting we're getting the most value to you in a way that's manageable for your budget. And so there's, we do have some flexibility within that. Again, because of how our model works, that's why we've been an attractive partner for organizations that don't have an HR person. If you could afford a full-time HR person within the budget, or if you could justify it based on total number of employees, you probably would already have one. And so kind of what Tim and I have talked about is, again, building out a system that can expand along with the library, so that we've got a good foundation, we've got a good structure in place for when the time comes that you bring in a business manager, an HR person, to take that into account.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sam.
Mhm.
Oh, Kristen, you have a question?
A couple of questions. And I apologize if this is, I'm not familiar with the positions and what is being, what range of services are being offered. Is, do you provide any, union negotiation, services as part of this?
So we don't do that. I know that we will be once consulting agreements are signed, we'll be looking to work with your employment counsel on that. Your employment counsel would lead that process, but then we'll be able to assist with whatever kind of deliverables come from that, and supporting Tim in that process. So we don't.
So the
We don't-
employment council would do the actual negotiation process, but in terms of the I want to say as opposed to the legalistic side, I'm talking about the more the softer side, the actual sort of putting things into layman's terms. Is that what you would do, or?
So when it comes to union negotiations, you want legal on all of that. And so in terms of that, we want to make sure that that legal is driving that. When it comes to your collective bargaining agreement, that's all going to come from legal. But when it comes to like your general employee handbook for non-union employees, when it comes to helping employees kind of understand those policies, yes, we can support with that. Again, the union piece, we want to make sure that legal is really driving that process, because there's just so much risk involved in that.
And then second part of that is then, do you provide any sort of advice or counsel, or not counsel, sorry, wrong word, advice on staff risk incident responses, or is that something that you might be involved with?
Yeah, so we do trainings on workplace violence prevention. We can help Tim and the board with setting up a workplace violence prevention program, and looking at what those moving parts are. Part of our audit process is looking at safety and reporting, and making sure, again, that we've got a good system in place for incident reporting, how that's communicated to staff internally, within people's different roles. So for instance, what a branch manager might look at versus a reception or a clerk, that kind of thing. So yeah, we can certainly support with that. We do a pretty wide range of trainings. Again, part of what we would look at first glance is looking at an audit to figure out, again, what those priorities are. And that can certainly be determined by Tim in collaboration with you as the board.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would assume that you would also function as a third-party investigation.
That's correct. Yeah, we are. That's a good question. So we are, our managing member is a licensed private investigator. In New York State, you have to either be an attorney or a PI to do external investigations. And so we are licensed to do external investigations. So we certainly can provide that for you if the time comes.
Okay.
We typically would do a separate engagement for that is clearly defined within the scope of that, so that we can establish what that again, what that work is separate from our other HR work that we'd be doing.
And then how long does the audit process typically take?
It depends. We've had some that we've done within a 2-month time frame. We've had some for larger employers that have extended to 9 to 12 months. But again, we're talking more than a couple hundred people and different regulatory pieces. So for you all, again, we're looking at probably around the 2-month mark to kind of get everything, all the information reviewed, and then there will be additional time that we're looking at. This is what our priority is to address between kind of what we think we need to move up. Some things are we can make immediate changes. So some things that we find in an audit, if you don't have a poster up, we can just get you that poster and put it up. Some things, again, when we're looking at an incident reporting process, that might take, a couple of weeks to get in motion. It may, if we're looking at something that may require board approval, that may take an additional time. So some pieces are a little hard to pinpoint exact timeframes.
And you'd be looking at policies in New York State compliance. And what's your experience with municipalities, libraries, and civil service?
So we worked with another organization within the Upper Hudson system. They were actually referred us to Tim because of their work. So Tim can provide you with contact information if you'd like to kind of discuss what their experience was. And then we've worked with other municipal entities within the area, either to provide training, doing investigations, and just managing the civil service piece, because it's got its finer points, and certainly its nuances. So we've got experience in house with that.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah,
Last
absolutely.
question. Have you ever done board trainings?
We do. I've worked very closely with boards. I don't typically, our managing member typically does the board training. She's also an experienced labor and employment attorney. And so she's done quite a bit of board trainings. And so if there are specific things, again, we've got resources that we can point you to.
Thank you.
Yep.
From my end, it's been a pleasure to work with Sam, is what I will say.
Seems great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any final questions for Sam? Yeah, thank you so much for joining us and fielding our questions and giving us an overview. We really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
We look forward to working with you extensively.
Thanks. Y'all take care.
Thank you.
Tim, thank you again for bringing them to my and our attention. I think it should be a good fit to do a lot of corrective work.
What's the time frame to get started?
I have a meeting with Sam this week to just kind of start the auditing process. And then going back and forth right now with legal counsel to review the contract. So hoping to have that in place by tomorrow. I can pass that along to the board so that way it's ready for Sam to begin later this week.
We don't have to approve it. We're just reviewing it.
Reviewing.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Any other comments, questions about that? Okay. All right, moving on. Foundation update. So foundation meets once a year. The president is a de facto board member. The president of the board of trustees of the Detroit Public Library is a de facto board member of our foundation. Unfortunately, due to a personal emergency, I wasn't able to attend the foundation's meeting. And instead discuss it with Tim, who presented on our behalf in my stead. I'm extremely pleased to report having a conversation with the board president last week. At the foundation will be providing us with $31,000, the entirety of their annual allotment towards work up at Lansingburg. And please excuse me not relaying the specificity of the language at this time, but the money is for ongoing remediation work at Lansingburg. I would also like to report that the board, through their president, was very complimentary of Tim, and said that he did an excellent job presenting. The entirety of the board was impressed, with him as a person, with his candor, his presentation skills, and that they look forward to working with us. And there was also a offer that if, the board is interested, their board president would be willing to come to one of our board meetings to discuss the work of the foundation. So I thought if folks are interested, I could set that up either for February or March, depending on everyone's schedule.
That's
So,
great.
cool.
Yes.
The check should be in the mail, as of last Friday. So I expect that we intend to see that in the mail sometime very soon. I'm gonna work with Tim to provide, I think, a reasonable quarterly update as to what we're actually doing with the funds to the foundation board, which has been a request. So, which I found very reasonable. So I'm very, very happy to report that that went well. Should I still be the president come December this year? Obviously, 11 months from now, I hope to be able to make the next meeting. Additionally, I would also offered, my help and in extension, the board's help in identifying new board members for the foundation to serve on it. I have approached a few people casually on the board currently offering this up, but please take this as an invitation. If you know folks in Troy, who are primarily proud supporters of the library and are interested in the success of the institution, to please get in contact with me, and I'd be happy to direct them to the appropriate individuals on the board. And if anyone has any questions about that, please email me, call me, text me anytime. They're looking for an additional 2 members.
Is that to expand the board or to replace?
Primarily replacement.
And the funding they're giving us, can that be applied to the quick response bill?
I believe so. But I figured that at a forthcoming meeting, we would discuss the best possible use of the funds in light of current expenses and to be conducted planning.
I will say that the crux of my presentation was about the remediation at Lansingburg and the quick response bill.
Okay, because I know that's what we had talked about, but I wasn't sure from the report.
How long are their board terms? We're gonna ask folks.
I think it's,
Indefinite.
yeah, I think it's for life. So the president serves for life, and it seems indefinite until people pass away or resign from the board, which is
A lot of
was
the
explained to me how
board
it
members are
happens.
former library board members.
Yeah, is there a conflict of interest if you're active? Because I know you're on it. Are you on it? No, but is that a conflict of interest?
That's a very good question. I'll take that one back and review it. Thank you, Rhea.
Yeah.
You know, hate to jeopardize the, financial.
a voting member of it?
Yes.
Okay.
I could see there being a limit or something anyway.
I think the board is fairly small, right? 3, 4 people?
7 people.
7.
7 with the vacancies
Yeah.
or, okay.
Sorry, that was what the vacancy.
Yes. Tim, I would love if you could just let us know, whenever that check comes in the mail.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna get in touch with their president and see if they're able to make our next meeting, put it on the agenda. All right, moving along, director's report.
Good evening, everyone. So I will go through the director's report. The first item in my director's report is about the changes to our operating hours. So I imagine that we'll want to spend some time and pull that out and kind of discuss that separately after I give the report. So I'll go through that. On Monday, February 10th, the Troy Public Library will be temporarily changing its hours of operation in order to provide better service to the community, to address a staffing shortage, and to create a safer working environment for the employees of the library. The result will be a decrease of 9 hours per week at the main library and an increase of 10 hours per week at the Lansingburg branch. The upcoming HVAC construction project will be interfering with the main library's normal operations for a period of about 4 to 6 months, which will lead directly into our reduced summer hours of operation. So it was an opportunity for us to capitalize on the HVAC project, and that brings us into the fall where it will give me more time to assess whether filling the current staffing vacancies will help address some of the issues that we're facing right now, staffing desk and creating a safe work environment, or if we will need to go out to the community in the fall to, request additional support for staffing. So that way we can restore those extended evening hours at the main branch. So the proposed schedule that we worked on with the senior management team was reducing the hours at the main library. Instead of closing at 8 p.m., we will be closing at 6 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And then our Friday hours will remain the same. Saturday, we will open 1 hour later at 10 a.m. For a total of 51 hours. The proposed schedule at Lansingburg, Tuesday and Wednesday would still be our late nights at Lansingburg, and we would be open until 8 p.m. Over at the branch. And otherwise, it would be 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday and Thursday. Friday and Saturday would be 10 to 5. As far as continuing evening programs and providing services to the community, it's a typical practice in the library community to close the building, and then on the days that you are doing evening programs or board meetings, to basically reopen the building so that way the event can happen, so that way the board meeting can continue. But it gives library staff an opportunity to secure the building before we let people back in, and with the understanding that we're not going to be checking out books or letting people pick up holds and things like that.
So you would just be letting people in for the event and not for other functions of the library?
That's correct. Yes, Marie. I'll get to this a little bit later in my report, but I've also been, I'll skip around a little bit in the report if you don't mind. I'll cut ahead to the staffing portion of my director's report. So the following staff have resigned from their respective positions. We had Sophia Prue, who was a library student helper in the circulation department. She resigned effective December 26th. And Chloe Whitaker has put in her resignation. She will be leaving the library on January 31st. She was a librarian 1 in the adult services department, and she focused on programming for adults. The following job vacancies are currently being addressed. We've been working with the Civil Service Commission. They are currently canvassing library assistants that are on the eligibility list. I spoke with Cheryl in the Troy Civil Service Commission just before this meeting. The canvas responses are due back this Friday. So at that point, we'll be able to move forward and hopefully hire an additional circulation staff member. The business manager, there was no eligibility list in place. So that position has been posted and shared on Nyline as well as CDLC. That position is closing on the 24th of January. The head of circulation support services supervisor and the community engagement specialist have also both been posted. The community engagement specialist was a newly created position by the board for this year. Both of those we're currently collecting applications, and those will be closing on January 31st. And then with the librarian 1, that was announced this week. So we're going to be starting the paperwork with civil service now. We have to file a personnel change form with civil service whenever there is a resignation, change of address, increase in salary, et cetera, with civil service. So when I came into the library, there were roughly 16 current and former employees who did not have the right classification on file with civil service. employees who had not been with the organization for some time were still, being accounted for on the Troy Civil Service Commission. So I could not move forward with filling these vacancies until those deficiencies were addressed. So that has also been part of the challenge. And then going back to the hours of operation, again, I feel better knowing that a community engagement specialist will also be available to help us kind of secure the building and when we are doing those after hours evening programs. So, do you want to spend time talking about that now, or should I go through the rest of my report?
Does anybody have any questions for Tim in the moment?
Have all deficiencies with civil service been addressed for current staff?
There are 4 loose ends that we are currently working on addressing. Yes, so once those are complete, which again, they're relatively minor, is what I will say. Hopefully by the end of this week.
Has that caused any friction among staff with negative fallout from, like, are any of these deficiencies something that caused a reversion of someone's pay or role or anything like that?
And again, I think the Troy Civil Service Commission, is reports to sort of the New York State Civil Service Commission. So I am unclear if there will be any sort of actions related to the paperwork that we are filing now when the Troy Civil Service Commission is audited.
When does that audit take place? Do we know?
I do not know that information.
If it's for civil service, but what is like the hiring process in terms of you hire somebody? How long does it take for it to go through civil service before they actually can start? More so just curious how long it will take to fill these positions.
Yeah, I can give a high level. So let's say we were creating a position, it would have to go to the Civil Service Commission. We tell them the types of duties and responsibilities that the person would have. They would create sort of a job title and job description that would have to be put on the agenda for the Civil Service Commission to be approved. Then there would be the creation of an eligibility list. Once an eligibility list is established, then you would canvass the applicants from that. So with a lot of these positions, because, to answer your question now, because the titles are already in place, because I am not at this time making changes to the job descriptions or the knowledge, skills, and abilities in order to get people filled and into those positions, it really is a much faster process. So for instance, with the business manager, with the head of circulation, and with the community engagement specialist, I'm hoping and am hopeful that someone can be in there by early March, as far as providing adequate notice to their employer and things like that.
That's great.
Yep. So it can be a more difficult process. If you know how to work the process, it goes much more smoothly.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. It is a complicated system, but not a complex system, right?
Yes.
So,
That's what I need to say, right?
yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, you're welcome. So continuing on with my report, talking about the Directors Association meeting, considering new people counting software from a vendor called Facility Site. The library currently does not have any mechanism to provide an accurate count of foot traffic through the main library in the Lansingburg branch. This is a key component on New York State annual statistical reports for libraries. It's a great tool for advocacy. So I'm starting to work with Upper Hudson to get more information about the vendor and pricing. Troy Library is part of the Equity Challenge through the Upper Hudson Library System. So the Troy Public Library can earn money from Upper Hudson for completing certain benchmarking achievements. I'm going to be following up on staff with, what we can do to try and get some of that funding.
Central funding, sorry.
Essentially, if you complete some of these, like, let's say, so this month we were talking about what does equity and diversity look like in library collections. So if you go through certain auditing processes with your collection, then Upper Hudson might give you, $500 or $1,000 for, checking off. And there's a list of items and a corresponding dollar amount, that goes with us doing the due diligence and going through the process. You're welcome. This year was the first time that Upper Hudson users surpassed 1 million overdrive checkouts in a single year. This was also the first year that the Troy Library reached the e-content minimum spending contributions. So these are guidelines that are agreed upon by the member libraries that essentially ask us to pay our fair share into the digital content market based on how our patrons are using it and our service population. So our 2025 minimum spending contribution will be $17,189.72. And the current average wait time for a Troy patron to receive an ebook from Overdrive is roughly 39 days as of October of 2024. Fun statistic, which is actually pretty good as far as library systems around the state and across the country go. Upper Hudson has a very good reputation, and it's because of the minimum spending contributions that ask members to chip in and be accountable for that. Some of the different models, don't necessarily put the onus on the member libraries, but because Upper Hudson structured it that way, we're actually very successful, and it's a better patron experience than what you might find in some of the other libraries, Mohawk Valley, Sal's, etc. So,
Does that include audio or is it just?
audio and ebook.
And
So that,
Go
that
ahead.
17,189, is that in our budget? I should probably know that. I shouldn't be asking you, but I don't know.
My understanding is yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And not only the libraries that you talked about, but the New York Public Library only allows you to reserve 3 books
Mhm.
and only allows you to borrow 3 books compared to what we're allowed to do under the UHLS guidelines, which are much more liberal.
Mhm. Thank you, Marie.
Yeah, just on that, the minimum spending contribution, this might be a issue of my memory failing me, but that's the first time I've ever even heard of that, so, I, hope there's not other minimum contribution standards that we are failing our partner organizations on.
If there are, I will certainly let this group know. Yes, exactly.
That's, very disturbing.
The annual statistical report is now open. So I'll be meeting with Jonna from Upper Hudson tomorrow tomorrow morning to review some of the material and acquaint myself with the statistics. Try and get a good start on that. Library Advocacy Day, I know Rhea mentioned this in her report from the Upper Hudson Board, is scheduled for Wednesday, February 5th. Will be primarily at the Legislative Office Building. It's an opportunity for library directors, library staff, Board of Trustees members, and members of the public to speak to their elected officials about the importance of their community libraries. If you're interested in attending, feel free to contact me to fill out a request form. Troy is really a poster child for the statewide construction program. And it's a great opportunity for us to talk about sort of some of the limitations of the program and ways that, hopefully legislators can meaningfully expand it. Using it for I believe, Tim Burke and I were talking about this, and I'm not going to get the terminology correct, but right now you're only able to replace fixtures instead of being able to restore them. So that's, something, for instance, that in speaking to our electeds and really making a case for that, hopefully we can make some progress on that. Were there any questions about the Directors Association portion?
Can I just ask, I saw that you have a meeting scheduled with Paul Tonko's office. Did you reschedule with John McDonald?
I am working on rescheduling with John McDonald. The meeting that I am having with Paul Tonko is going to be Friday, the 17th, this Friday at 1:30 p.m. At his Albany office, if any members of the board would like to join.
Sorry, what was the time?
1:30 p.m. At his Albany office, yes.
This Friday?
That's correct, yes.
Do you know who you're meeting with?
I do not. I'm understanding it may be the representative.
Okay.
Yep.
I can probably fit.
Okay.
Can I ask who on the board would potentially go to the Library Advocacy Day? I haven't,
We can schedule that one off.
As part of this statistical report, that includes the board members and their training? Does that go into that?
I cannot remember. We used to go over this with member library directors when I was in Southern Tier, and I can't remember for the life of me if there is a section, if the board has completed their 2 hours of
Right.
required
So we
training,
need
I
to-
believe.
We need
Yes.
to collect that from each board member.
Mhm,
It has been in
And
the
it's
past.
2 hours, yes, there is a question.
mhm.
To the 2 hours of continuing education and then the annual sexual harassment.
Yes,
Both all needs to be.
yes.
So
Thank you,
if you've
Carol.
done it somewhere else, you can provide that information, but it needs to be provided.
We've gone through work.
If you've done it through your work, as long as you have some way to prove that. In the past year, they want you to do it every year.
Did it like 3 days.
There you go.
It's like, I think it's one day.
Yeah.
There you go.
It must be that time. Oh, they would just.
Wasn't it to you?
Actually.
Yes,
Or-
I will,
or I can-
I'll,
Can you just send something out about it to all? Yeah,
yes,
That
I
would-
will,
that-
I'll communicate.
let's just do that. Yeah.
The
Thank you.
requirement out afterwards, just as a reminder to make sure.
Because I
everyone knows
completely
that.
forgot you need the certificates for other stuff. I forgot about that.
Right. I think
But
as a
thank you.
board, you can decide whether you want to, you can self-report too. I don't know whether we ever decided that, but I think it's self.
If there's no further questions, I'll just continue onward. As far as library collections, museum pass statistics for 2024 were compiled. The library circulated museum passes 344 times this past year, which is really great. A lot of that comes through the generosity of the friends, so thank you to Freda. The library added 5,371 items to our collection this year, which included 1,729 adult fiction books and 835 YPS fiction books. So that would include children's picture books plus YA materials for teens. And then I also included the graphics for the Q4 digital circulation statistics. Very broadly speaking, if you look on the second page at our Overdrive users and Hoopla users, the trend lines are going up. And I believe overall across the system, Judith Wines had completed a separate report. It's going up across the system, and I think after the pandemic, it's here to stay at this point. So
I love Hoopla.
Hoopla's great. Overdrive's great.
I don't know. What do you
Really?
use?
Libby?
So Overdrive is the company that owns Libby.
They're the
Yeah.
Oh,
same.
I have Libby. I didn't realize.
They're the same.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what do you use Hoopla for? Audiobooks. Really?
Because they're on demand, kind of nice.
And they may have the same content as Libby. So sometimes if there's a wait line on Libby, you can get it on Hoopla much faster.
Yeah.
So from a pricing model, the library pays, I think, like $5 a circulation or something to that effect with Hoopla compared to Libby. So I know some of the smaller libraries have discussions about limiting Hoopla checkouts per patron. So if the board
Do they pay more for Hoopla than for Libby or Bryce?
for boards that have smaller budgets, an increase of 1 to 2 users checking out, let's say 5 items a week might have a more significant impact on the budget of a smaller library.
With Hoopla.
With Hoopla, yes. Mhm.
Thank you for the graphics, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
super helpful.
you're welcome. So that was a quick note about the collections. As far as construction, building grants, I had been working with the folks at the downtown. We're working at folks with the Department of State to ensure that our MWBE requirements were being met. There was a little bit of back and forth, and again, I did not pick this up until much later, so I apologize for that. At this point in time, we are waiting to hear back from the Department of State that we meet the MWBE requirements, so that way we can move forward and execute the contracts with the low bidders. So hopefully we should have more movement on that later this week. That was the building, and then we get into the incident section. So my incident section is actually outdated because we have 20 incidents between, well, between December 2nd and today, we have 20 incidents. They vary in severity and scope. For instance, 3 of them were incidents related to children falling and hurting their knees. So some of the things that I thought the board would like to know were, again, the incident where a patron came into the library on the night of December 23rd and just did not know a patron and tried to punch them. That was the patron we were trying to ban. We were not able to write an incident report because we did not have enough staff, and the staff members who were in the building, one of them was being, a patron has followed this young female employee and was harassing them. So we were trying to write up and document an incident while dealing with another incident. And that was the day before Christmas, before we closed for Christmas Eve. And then the morning of the 26th is when the violent patron came back in. A staff member asked them to leave the building. They swung at the male staff member. A supervisor came out, asked them to leave immediately. And that's when the supervisor was punched in the face. And then I've included some other things.
Can I
Please go ahead.
I just have a few questions.
Yep.
About the specific incident, the first one here.
Yep.
Bulletin where a supervisor was punched in the face.
Yep.
Did we get in touch with the Troy Police Department at all? Were they called?
Oh, that Troy Police was called. Yes,
Was there did they respond?
they did respond.
Did they take a report?
Yes. My understanding is they took a report. The staff member was interested in pressing charges because there was no immediate bruising, and no long-term damages. The officer said that the charges would be dropped.
The charges she wanted to press.
That she could not press charges because there was no.
I
Did you?
had
Sorry.
a similar experience where, because I had no injury, that it would be harassment versus assault.
I was told when I was punched this year on the streets of Troy, you were punched this year on the streets of Troy. The Troy Police Department informed me that I could file a report, but then the person would have all my contact information and therefore they didn't write anything up. It wasn't on their records and they discouraged me from filing for my own safety.
Because so I made the decision to permanently ban this patron from the library with the option to appeal their banning status to the director after 1 year. And because we have we have the trespass on file, the trespass would be more severe than, yeah.
Can I ask, sorry, you have a trail of questions, but you're meeting with Carmela tomorrow, yes?
I'm meeting with Carmela tomorrow and I am scheduling meetings with the head of community policing to talk about the incident, essentially ways that the library can work with the police and work with the city to to really expedite this process and just make sure that when we ban someone, that it will be actionable and swiftly.
Yes. When is that?
The meeting with Carmela is tomorrow at 1 p.m.
Community,
I'm still working to schedule that. I'm waiting to hear back from them.
would you be willing to have a board member attend with you?
I would be happy to.
Especially since I was on the police reform working group, I would be very interested.
Same. Yeah, if you could share that with all of us.
Also, the police department did ask me if I could help rewrite some of their policies.
Start with the one with giving your
That's
contact
not-
information.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I would like to be there because I think that there's some, when we're doing our policy work and we know that their policy work needs improvements as well, it would be nice to align those efforts so that they could be in support of each other.
There was a former staff member who was being harassed by a patron who was threatened by the patron. And I was told that the police gave the person who was harassing the staff member their home address and name because they were a public servant. So again, talking about creating an environment of safety and things like that, that was hard for me to hear. I think that was my second day on the job.
I would like to bring, I already mentioned someone, I won't say their name here, but I did mention someone that was also in the police reform working group with us and is the former head of security at RPI, Columbia, and the New York Port Authority. And I would love to bring this person in because they're very good at workplace harassment, the understanding of that, and prevention, protection, de-escalation strategies and other things.
Yeah, let's bring that to the admin committee meeting.
Okay, let's discuss that.
Were there any other questions about my director's report?
I have only at the end.
Well, I haven't gone over my outreach calendar.
Okay, that was it.
One more on the inside.
Okay.
Because I did hear what Edward said in my question, and I think we sent this an email too. There is a little bit of a conflict between the board not communicating with staff and the messages that we've received to not communicate with staff, and now the desire to communicate with staff. I want to know in situations like this, and we don't have to solve for it right here, what is our policy? Because we want to take care of our people and make sure they're okay, but I also want to be respectful of the policies that are in place. So it doesn't sound like we would solve that today, but I want to point out that there is a conflict right now that prevents us from talking to staff. And we are being respectful of that. Also, is this employee, everything else I'll say, because I think it probably would go into an executive session around personnel and specifics. Okay.
I think there would be a lot to discuss in either an admin committee meeting, again, about focusing strictly on the policies, that kind of governance portion. Yeah.
Sam, if you don't mind, if we could add that to the agenda for our next admin committee meeting, which conveniently is tomorrow.
Right, which that's why I was, because on your thing, you have it on the 22nd, but we had moved it to tomorrow
Okay.
at the last meeting, correct?
Yes.
No, that's not right.
Yes.
Oh, the last admin committee meeting? Oh, I guess I wasn't there.
At the last admin committee, we changed it because we didn't want to have back-to-back meetings because people were failing
Okay, and
towards the
that's
end.
actually going to be, today is what day? Oh my God. Okay, thank you.
And what time is the meeting tomorrow? Is it 5:45?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, thanks.
That's what you're bringing.
Didn't realize
Yes.
it's changed. It's level 2.
And then as far as my outreach and professional development calendar, there's a list of everything. Just of note, I will be out of the library from January 23rd to January 27th. I'm speaking at the American Library Association's Live Learn X conference in Phoenix. I should be back to the library on January 24th. Or 28th, yeah, sorry, no. Long day.
Superhero.
Thanks, I'm trying my best, Rhea.
You can flip it at least.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Thank you so much. Tim.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any last questions for the director's report?
I had a comment. So I understand that you're looking into equipment to do counts of usage, but there would be other ways, I would think, of doing counts, sampling, or that sort of thing, if we can't afford the equipment to do so. That, as far as I know, haven't been done.
I can speak to my understanding of the current process is that once every few months, we would count the number of people for 2 weeks. In my professional experience, this is not adequate or sufficient, and it doesn't really represent how valuable the library is as an institution to the community. Often we see professionally that circulation numbers are going down, but foot traffic will be going up because we're offering job and career services. Folks at Lansingburg might be just going in to get the free food from Capital Roots. So it can be very difficult to capture that. I believe the quote in question was $800 per exterior door and roughly $12 to $14 a month once the installation happens, which is quite affordable, I think, compared to a lot of other vendors I've seen. So, but again, no, I would respectfully disagree, I guess, about the ability to track.
Having the equipment doesn't capture some of the things that you just mentioned.
Mhm.
in terms of what's occurring. Why, you know,
But they do have to walk in the building.
And perhaps they're counting different things, maybe they're complementary to each other. So that one is not necessarily an exclusion to the other, that it's, provides a fuller picture perhaps.
Mhm.
We'll still be doing community surveys, right? And, I think we need the data. We need the
Yeah,
data.
of course.
And program attendance numbers will still be kept and things like that. Yeah.
I have a question about the person that was running our programs essentially leaving and what the plan is for that.
Because of the library HVAC construction, as I mentioned, and that I can't speak about that particular thing in an open forum, without going into executive session, but with the HVAC project, we weren't sure if we were going to be getting the money from Paul Tonko, so sort of the scope of that. So we had not been planning as robust programming through February and March. So in a lot of ways, it ends up working out very well. So that way we have a little bit of a lull right now before the summer. We can do the hiring quickly. And again, my hope is to get somebody in here before April.
So there are no programs at all February.
There are programs. It's just, again, slightly limited compared to what we were doing because we were waiting to figure out what the scope and extent of the HVAC work, how that would affect library operations. Yeah, you're welcome. We weren't sure if we would have access to the programming room was the issue.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
moving on. So this is cart before the horse, but I just wanted to let the board know, that I plan to bring a draft code of conduct and code of ethics to our next meeting. I believe these are long overdue, in terms of governing, the nature of this body, and the individuals who have and will populate it, indefinitely with the institution. I will be modeling it based off of what our partners, organizations offer, including Kingston one.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Wait, there's another one. There's another one to crib from. So thank you very much. I'll be sending out the draft to the board. I would love comments. I would love to review. I'll also be discussing with Tim, who has sent me resources to develop these things. So I appreciate his expansive professional network and knowledge in terms of developing these. So we should see those by our February meeting. And thank you so much.
I've had that for a long time. But trying. Yeah.
That's all I have in that matter at this time. I was a little more ambitious at the end of December in my mind than I was. So February, you should see those draft documents. Moving on the agenda, Carolyn, would you like to take the floor, talk about the outreach committee? Maybe.
I will, I guess. So at our last outreach committee and in having discussions with Tim, we were talking about the outreach committee and as you saw in my notes, I'm sure, we talked about how with having so many different levels of people who work in the library involved in the committee that it blurs some of the lines based on proper procedures. And that it filled a void when there was there, and that things have changed and that this might be a natural time with the survey being done and then us presenting the survey hopefully next month to the board and then sharing it with Tim, that it would be a natural time for that committee to be dissolved. And then if we wanted to do something different, that's really just board related and deals more with governance than operational, because the outreach committee got into a lot of operational things that we really shouldn't have been involved in. We would do that at that time. So I guess my motion is that we would dissolve the outreach committee meeting, the ad hoc outreach committee, effective March 1st, 2025.
Can I ask a question?
Well, we just need to second the motion. So,
Oh, sorry.
questions or comments?
I was just going to note that Kirsten had a good comment about the board needing to perform oversight and having oversight responsibilities. So, you know, that was, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add.
Just in terms of a mechanism, some sort of mechanism to gauge public needs, desires, interests.
Yeah.
And whether it's through the this committee or whether a different committee, a different mechanism, I'm certainly open to that discussion.
I think, I just think as a board that we should, we'll work with Tim this year. So I appreciate the work of, the outreach committee, collecting all of that data, which I had a grand old time just sifting through the raw stuff.
Some of the stuff is quite amusing.
Yes, it's very, I agree. I look forward to seeing the final report. I appreciate all of the work that's gone into it. I think what we can do as an organization is work with Tim, on the output of that, and then develop a cadence at which we would like to solicit this kind of feedback from the community going forward. I don't think annually makes any sense. I get tired of taking surveys all the time, but we can determine that at a later date.
Yes, and as I mentioned to Tim in the meeting, it is in our long range plan, I believe. It's either in the long range or the strategic that we do an annual survey. It doesn't have to be a community survey, but it
Gotcha.
does say that and then I meant to go look at that, whether it means the board has to do that or the library has to do that.
We could clarify that language. too.
Yes. So, and whether we want to leave that in there.
Can I ask my question?
Okay, yeah.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I was just curious about, because I don't know that much about the outreach committee outside of the meeting notes. Are there any responsibilities or duties that have to be now pushed to other
Well, it
committees?
would become more a staff's responsibility to table at events. That's where we were filling in the void, was to really to table at events, to bring more events. And whether or not board members would still table at events, that would be, again, up to Tim. And now
And in talking to, the board and, Evelyn and Keith who were on that committee, really my issue was the granularity of the outreach committee, so I think I could imagine a world where the board has a table, the Friends have a table, the library has a table, right?
So the event is all us.
Exactly.
I'm joking.
Yeah. So really that was, in my mind, if we were going to be that granular with kind of the operational side of it, the library is appropriate for the library to take that on.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
rather than the board. But again, that was.
Rhea, you had a question?
That was my question, was with staffing levels where they are right now, it feels like the board was filling staff duties. I think it's important to feel the problem and to not rely too heavily, but yeah.
I also want to stress, I know I shared the library growth chart with the board early on, 1 month ago when I was a new director. But really like focusing on the capacity building, right? So I know it's coming from a very well-intentioned place that the board is stepping to fill the gaps. And if we are focused on, creating the capacity for the library to be self-sustaining, and to have the adequate staffing to do that, to have a full-time facilities manager to help, track of 2 130-year-old buildings, HR staff, things like, if we can work broadly on the governance and fundraising, I think that would put us in a really great position for years to come.
All right, there is a motion on the floor. So all in favor? All opposed? Any abstentions?
Who seconded that motion?
I did. What was that, Marie?
I'll abstain because I don't know enough about it.
Thank you so much, Karen.
Oh.
All right, all the new business.
I want to point out, we did win an award in Lansingburg, and I hope that can continue.
And I did take the plaque over there because it was sitting in our office for so long that I'm like, if I don't, something will happen to it.
The staff are very proud of that award.
Hi, Mark. Good.
And I was already thinking what we could do with the bus next year.
Oh, God, stop.
No, next year's a hot air balloon. No, I'm sorry.
We're doing up.
All right, Halloween planning can happen in the summer.
Elsewhere.
Thank you very much.
Gotta get through the budget.
I do appreciate, well, I guess that season is fairly cold too. Anyway, moving on to old new business, I'll kick it off with some new business. I didn't add it to the agenda because there's very little to talk about so far. I just want to provide everybody with a union update generally. Tim and I are exploring options for legal counsel, and we hope to have someone by the end of this month, to represent the board.
Can
Uh,
I ask if you're considering the current legal services that we give Osterman and Rana?
They're one of our options, yeah,
Okay.
but we have not settled anything.
Can I do a quick thing? Bethlehem said that they used a different attorney for the negotiation, and that was highly advised at UHLS to separate. Okay.
I also agree with that sentiment.
Okay.
But we just have to consider all of the options at this time. I've had some preliminary introduction talks with their representative that have been very kind. And the library should be sending out a press release that was drafted ideally by the end of this week. And that is all in that. We have tentatively agreed to begin bargaining in the winter of 2025. We have not set a date yet. Once we've identified our appropriate legal counsel, and once we've agreed on an initial kickoff date for this, I will let folks know.
And I wanted to add that at the last meeting, I agreed to look into it. But when I started, it seemed to me that it would be better if I passed that on to Tim, who would have to implement it, rather than having things filtered through me. That's what occurred.
And again, UHLS has been, there's a lot of them that gone through it. Did you already talk to directors and folks? Okay. I have a short list if you want me to share that.
Yeah, speaking of lists, I offered the press list. I don't know what this library has in terms of a press list. Like what Paul did, or is there nothing, like you're starting from scratch?
Yes.
Okay, because Ken Crow's retiring, so I can provide you with some. Is that helpful to have like a list of people from like the various?
It is. I did not mention I'm also having an interview with the Troy Record tomorrow at some point. I believe it's after the meeting with Carmella. So-
Oh, there.
And that's up in Lansingburg.
Is that a spotlight or is it?
We are doing a 1-year follow-up on the roof and facilities in Lansingburg.
Can you post a window? Or go, no, I'm sorry.
Does anyone have any new or old business?
I just wanted to bring back up the fact that when Tim first came on, he had suggested that we begin each meeting. And I'm not gonna remember exactly how, but in a positive way. And everybody seems to agree with it, but we haven't done it. So I would like us to implement that if
We
possible.
can do that in February's meeting.
Can we
Perfect.
end this meeting on a positive note, so we all
We
go
certainly
home?
could do that.
Sure.
We could end or begin, either way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe ending it
And how we're
actually.
doing it, and maybe how we're doing it or what we want it to look like. I have a new business. I have a question about, and then we can go, and then we can go to something fun.
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess this is new business. It's what I mentioned to you, Alex, but I wanted to bring this up to the group, like in terms of our committee meetings. I'm like timing, I seem to be running into this problem over and over again, where if you're not at the meeting, like if you can't make a meeting at the end of that meeting, you decide when the next one is, so your availability for that next one is then hindered. So I'm curious I would love to push for standing meetings if it's possible, because then that way I can definitely attend them. And I don't know if other folks are having this problem, but it is hindering my ability to like show up to committee stuff when it changes every single month.
The
Um,
admin, we've made it stand. Are you on admin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Outreach, I know
Admin, we
outreach
have
was
a
and I
new,
know now we're in a
But we-
different, yeah.
but we actually started changing outreach because we were trying to accommodate for you, but then if you weren't at the meeting, we couldn't figure out. And
Right.
so that's why it's
So
moved
I
around a
wonder
couple of
if,
times.
if we don't do standing, so if a committee does not want to do a standing meeting, then I guess my request is rather than decide at the end of that meeting, perhaps an email or a doodle to like actually get the time. That way, anyone who is a part of that group hears it. Otherwise, you stack the deck for not being able to do it. And if I can help, or if there's like, if doodle seems crazy or you don't know how to use it or what, I'm happy to help anyone do that. But that would help me immensely so that I can participate.
I agree. That just happened to me with this finance situation.
Right,
I
same,
totally agree.
earlier, exactly. Okay, cool.
Can I ask a bigger question? I just got a really exciting sheet from UHLS that had every meeting for the year on it.
I mean, we could try to do that.
We could.
I think it's a great thing.
I would
think
love
it'd be-
it.
Yeah. Because then you can plan ahead.
Oh,
At least
yeah.
quarterly.
Yes.
Because we already know, why did this happen? Why is it all changing? Because we have the holidays. Of course, things are gonna change. So now we're back into the new year. We know the holidays are gonna happen again. We know summer's gonna happen. So let's just get
Yes.
ahead of it.
Oh,
I think it's a great idea.
I love a forecast. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's send a big doodle for all the things. No.
And I mean, you could
that's
even
silly,
try to do
but-
it. Like the outreach used to be standing. It used to be every, the third Friday at noontime, but then neither you or Rhea could make it. And so then we started changing it. So I think standing committees, I mean, makes
Yeah.
all of the sense.
Standing committee.
Right.
Right, for pretty much everybody else. And the election committee is new. Admin just started really
We
meeting.
started standing meetings because of you, I think, suggested it, which is great.
Also,
Does
the
the-
personnel needs to exist.
Right.
Yes. Only thing
That
is,
was gonna
it's
be another
tomorrow.
one.
That's it's a
I
Monday.
think we changed it last minute. I'm
Because-
not looking at
yes,
you.
Okay. Because tomorrow I
But we-
might have to hop on Zoom because
Okay.
like the one, yeah. Yeah.
Text me that to remind me that. That's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But, yeah, we'll figure that out.
And forgive my ignorance, does the board work with the director on setting the hours of service for each calendar year? And I can't remember if that is an operational thing with the director, where it's like, so for the town halls, I did a town hall in December and I am planning, I have the dates for the entire year to do a town hall once a quarter, to do staff professional development, to do, broad updates, get everybody together and things like that. But does the board generally work with the director on closing for holidays and things like that? And again, forgive my ignorance on the topic, but
I think we would appreciate,
research.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would appreciate a yearly forecast.
Okay.
Just primarily for our awareness.
And are we going back to this,
Go back to what?
the change in hours at some point? Or no? Are we done? Because we never made a motion to accept this, did we?
That and yes, and now you're reminding me the other thing, which is the acknowledgement of staff leaving.
I was going to bring that up.
So I want, yes.
I just want to make sure we don't leave without voting.
Um,
And can I just ask one question? When you say temporarily, are
And
you?
it's okay, can I?
Sure.
Thank you. We'll close that piece of new business. I just want to do the acknowledgement real quick, then we can bring back up the hours. Does that work? All right, I'm just going to motion to acknowledge, the resignation of Sophia Pugh and Chloe Rutherford. Did I say Pugh? Sorry, Crew, my bad. Start that one over. Mulligan. I'd like to motion to acknowledge, the resignation of Sophia Prue and Chloe Whitaker, from the Detroit Public Library.
Second.
All in favor? All right, now
Great
let's-
work of service from them.
Yes, true.
Yes, will be missed.
Yes.
Chloe was instrumental in planning the Fall Fest, many great programs, really took the library to a new level. She has accepted a position as the director of the Waterford Library.
Oh, it's a nice little library.
Will you see her at the director's meetings?
They're a part of a separate system.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the
okay.
Southern Adirondack
Got it.
right
okay.
there. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, we'll bring back the amended operational hours.
And then as an operational thing, I wanted to bring it to the board, and certainly I will take feedback under advisement. But I do not foresee how we can continue to put staff in the situations that staff have been placed in.
Can I ask if staff has been, I know you said that you were working with upper management, but have staff been informed of this and what are their reactions?
Staff have been informed of it. There was a lot of like, oh, thank gods.
Yeah, I'm
things
sure.
like that to say. Yeah. So,
Does it feel like this would help address and avoid the incident most recently that occurred?
yes, so right now, again, in closing the building later, we are struggling. I mentioned this briefly to Alex, but oftentimes we are having department heads and supervisors staffing desk, so that way we have enough people to keep the building open. You know, or leaving the young people's service desk completely unattended, so that way staff can cover the reference desk and the circulation desk. So with the staffing model that we are proposing, we would be able to go from having 2 people on the circulation desk at night in the evening to 4 people. Which also provides an opportunity to do work on collection development, gives professional staff an opportunity, if they are not on desk, to work on programs. So in a lot of ways, I think by reducing the hours, my hope is we'll be able to offer more higher quality programs and services, because we won't have to be so concerned about sort of the safety components. Yeah, Kirsten. Oh, I'm sorry. I was out of order, but.
Question, and please let me know if this is not appropriate for this venue. If we're reducing hours, does that have any impact on individual employees' take-home salaries or will we be able to assign more staff for other times?
There is only one situation I can think of where a certain member normally comes in to cover a 5:30 to 8 p.m. shift. Everyone else, their hours will be, they will not have any reduction of hours. And then I'm going to try to work with that one staff member to find a way to make it work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But that was my chief goal is not to touch anyone's hours.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And is the plan when you have more staff members to change hours back?
Exactly. And really in filling the vacancies, we will reassess if we're able to, again, safely and appropriately staff the building in those extended evening hours. So that's sort of my first test, is to see, do we have enough at that time?
And I know we discussed this briefly, but I think if we will be amending the operational hours of the library, we can review the impact of it quarterly. And I see that in reviewing total incidents, any feedback that is directed towards the library from members of the public. And you already provided some usage statistics, so we can see if there's any changes there. And then make amendments as we see fit once we are appropriately staffed and appropriately trained, I would say, to see if we can, I hesitate to say return to the hours as they were in place, but further amend the hours to best meet the needs of the community.
I think to Alex's point, it's not a decision you ever want to have to make. It's certainly not a decision you want to have to make in your first month in a new position. And I think that once we have more data and a little bit more information and we see how this test run goes, we'll be able to provide a clearer picture for the community.
I think it's unreasonable to continue to operate at the hours that you have with the staff that you have.
Yep, and that's the challenge, is we have such a great community that expects us to provide world-class services and facilities. And I cannot meet those demands with the staffing and operational funding the way that it currently is.
And Tim, in your email, you said that you had shared talking points, I think, with.
Yes.
Could you share those with us as well? Because I'm sure there's gonna be people who are gonna say, you just asked for a 15% increase and now you're. So if
Yeah.
you, the more
Absolutely.
educated we are, that we can answer those questions, the better, I think. we're gonna be.
And again, thank God the board did go out for those increases, and I really do want to thank the board for going out for those increases because we would be in far worse shape had they not. So thank you.
I did send an email direct, but I didn't mention it to you. And since you're helping with the website, what I'd say is that to get ahead of some of the reputation concerns and complaints from patrons, we need to update the Google My Business listings for each location, so that when someone goes to Google to see when it's open, they're not going to have the wrong hours. In addition to updating the website, the phone system, everything else.
Just to clarify, the only things I'm volunteering to help with in the library are explicitly board related.
So I'm
yes.
available if you need assistance and the help, because
That
my
would-
assumption is it's hard for
That
people.
would be.
That would be, yeah, that would be an operational thing, so the staff would have to manage that.
Thank you.
But it's important to update the
Mm-hmm.
Google hours. Thank you.
And
So,
to volunteer to do that under the direction of it is okay, right? You're not saying that she can't do it.
Yeah, and I don't want to physically
Yes.
do it. What I'm saying is I'm
Gotcha.
available to help if someone doesn't know how to even do that, because I have a suspicion that whoever used to do it may not be around anymore.
I misunderstood, so yes, thank you.
I will also be mentioning this. I have an interview with the Sanctuary for Independent Media. I believe that's also tomorrow, but I can probably move that around. And then I plan to bring this up during the interview with the Troy Record. I do also want to highlight that Lansing is getting 10 additional hours of service, and we can start to shift some of the programs to that community as well. So I think that will also be kind of a test for, what are people asking for in that community? How can the library respond? And if we do have more staff to provide more programs at Lansingburg, will people come out for them? So.
I had asked the question as to whether somebody who works 9 to 5 or 9 to 5:30, whatever hours that you work, could get here and pick up books or do something before 6 o'clock. And Tim explained that there's flexibility involved, even though we hear that they're shutting down a half an hour before the actual posted time, that there would be flexibility that would allow people who are working to get in here other than a Saturday. To pick up materials.
For Claire, Marie is talking about using the public computers. The public computers will typically shut off at 5:30. So that way, if someone, let's say they do, they're on the computer, then they need to do a bunch of printing. The computers will shut down, and then they'll still have a small window to do faxing, scanning, and those services shut down at 5:45 or 7:45. But we do try to work with people on an individual basis. So if they have, 60 pages that they're trying to print and scan, we would have them come back the next day around a weekend. But if we're able to accommodate smaller jobs before closing, the staff are excellent. The staff are incredibly helpful with working with people.
And Wi-Fi continues to be available even after you're closed, right? So somebody can sit in their car and use the Wi-Fi.
That's correct. And if that's not correct, then I will make it that. But yes, my understanding is the Wi-Fi is available 24/7.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome. Again, I
Thank
just,
you all for the robust discussion.
well, and I very much appreciate the support to do what's necessary.
Ellen, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the new hours beginning February 10th that are suggested by Tim. I don't know. Do we need more than that in the motion?
Perhaps to be reviewed periodically.
To be reviewed periodically.
Do we have a second?
Yeah.
All in
Giving
favor?
it to you, but I.
Aye.
Can I bring up
Do you have a piece of new business?
yeah, well, it's oldish new, safety.
Old or new, old
Yeah.
business, sorry, that is the other half of it.
What is the status of the safety committee?
The committee structure in the library was being reevaluated by the department heads. So generally speaking, I found that there were not many structures in place, and they were inconsistent and ineffective in how they were being executed. So with the new committee structures that we were looking at, we were hoping to have our first safety committee meeting in January, which would be composed of a 5-member group, which would include stakeholder, department head, one PS, someone from Lansingburg, someone from circulation, someone from adult services. So you have key decision makers, well-represented group, to be able to do things like evaluate incident reports, evaluate after incident reports. There's the incident reporting component, and then there's also the facility safety. So, for instance, when that event happened where the staff member was punched, the staff were not trained about, who should call 911, who should attend to the person in question. There's been a lot of the staff have not been trained in what to do in a crisis as far as how to conduct themselves in the event. We had the fire alarm that went off in this past month. So in other organizations, we have, again, safety kits, reflective vests, someone who will work to evacuate the patrons out of the building, someone who will take charge and make contact with the fire department. So like those type of typical procedures and practices were not in place. So my hope is that, again, by the joke is that a camel is a horse that was made by committee, and in making something everyone's problem, it's nobody's problem. So by having 5 specific people who are accountable for certain groups, groups of thought, groups of, kind of collective care and management, that we can then have a more effective structure to identify areas where staff need to be trained, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a long way of answering your question. I'm hoping we can meet the end of this month, if not early February.
Are you modeling that on like an incident command structure, like the ICS formal?
Our policies and other organizations were, and that's kind of what I'm grifting it off of. I have not reviewed incident command structure, but I worked very closely with folks who had done a lot of that type of training. Yep. Emergency response at the municipal county level.
Right, and that's where I would normally think it's too large for this, but we are technically a municipality, so we're not.
And we can, scale up or scale down as appropriate and make it flexible. Yep.
And all it requires is 5 people. So you have the perfect number.
And so for the board to illustrate, some of the other things are like a technology committee meeting. In the budget discussions with Marie, there's not any type of line items for thinking about our IT hardware, for thinking about our IT data centers and infrastructure. So having a technology committee made up of staff to identify new and emerging technologies, to assess the functionality of our current hardware and software. The circulation committee to review kind of are things circulating the way we like, museum passes, et cetera, new books, working with the Upper Hudson Circulation Committee as well. And I don't have my notes in front of me, but it was circulation, safety. One of them was technology. The other one was communications that would encompass social media and the website. Right now, because we have such a small and lean and very thin staffing model, we have to distribute the work out through committees. So something like the website and social media can be very time intensive. But by having, a small group be accountable for that, and using technology like Hootsuite and other tools, you can do more effective work with a small number. So I'm trying to identify ways that we can do a lot of work with a small number of people. You're welcome. I don't know if that answers your question.
I just want to make sure that I'm concerned, because what I am hearing is in opposition to what I've heard in the past, which is that our staff is trained in how to handle these incidents and knows what to do. So I'm feeling,
There was a day, wasn't there, recently?
There was only one instance of training. We partnered with CDTA for conflicts, like de-escalation training. That was the only training that occurred.
I know the staff, and it was brought up today, the idea of de-escalation training. The staff have mentioned they have been through several de-escalation trainings that they did not find to be particularly effective, and they feel very well versed in how to de-escalate situations. But other aspects, they don't feel as prepared for. Well, and that's it, exactly. So when you have an escalated patron, right, like, there's a lot of confusion about what is the mechanism to actually ban a patron. Do we issue an order of trespass? Do we, staff were calling the 911 emergency number in situations where perhaps the non-emergency line may have been, so there was, again, some friction from the people who were responding, saying the library is on the bottom of our list. And again, I hope to have more insight on some of these comments when I talk directly to the city and to the folks in the community policing department.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Rita.
Yeah, great question.
Do we have any more old new business?
I had another question for Tim.
Please.
I know Virginia had a program for people who weren't quite ready to go out and work or go on in their education. I was curious what was happening with that program with Virginia leaving.
I have not, Virginia did not inform me about that program, but I can certainly do some research and get back to you, Marie. I'd be happy to.
It was through BOCES.
Okay.
Workforce development or?
It was through BOCES.
I know about it because they wrote us a letter of support for our grants.
And the creation of the personnel committee, we're gonna do that at the admin or?
Oh, we created the personnel
Okay.
committee last meeting.
We did, we haven't set up a.
Yes.
I was gonna ask if we can tack that on to the admin tomorrow.
Oh, to actually have that be the personnel committee meeting?
Yes. How do we feel?
Fortunately, I have a hard deadline for tomorrow.
We'll find another day and time.
Yeah.
I'll send something out.
I think at this point, just on the personnel committee, we'll meet quarterly. And then expand if necessary. All right, any other old/new business? All right, anybody get any community feedback? Hearing none, do we have any public comment? Any public comment on the line? All right. Our next meeting is going to be February 11th, 2025. The timing of the finance committee meeting will probably be adjusted to give us more time to discuss the important business. But the regular meeting will still be at 5:30 p.m.
And we discussed the finance committee starting at 4:45, right?
Yeah. Just have to, yes, update that and approve or post that. Yes, thank you. 4:45. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Well, as tired as I am, we should do something positive.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Please. Thank you. Thank you. I thought requesting a motion to adjourn would be positive.
Right, right.
No.
So do you have any suggestions, or should it just be like,
That's nice. Thank you for reminding me.
what you've seen in the past? Is it library specific or like just something positive about the world that's on fire?
If we could start with a library specific share, just a library specific memory that has importance to you. I'll leave it very open ended. And I guess I can start by modeling that and saying, again, I worked with a person who was in a shelter, and over the course of several months, we were able to help them get comfortable enough with the computer to complete a job application, to get a job. Worked with them over the course of many hours trying to get them into housing, and we had been working with them for like 8 months, and then it was Thanksgiving, and he said, "This is the first time I've been able to have my family over for Thanksgiving in 11 years." And that was like one of the moments I knew I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. So, yeah.
Sid, you want to follow that one up?
I
Stand up.
My elementary school librarian, if this is how we're doing this, you could only take out 3 books a week. And she let me take out 6 because she knew how much I love to read. And I think it just made me feel like librarians were this magical offering of a person. I don't know, yeah,
Yeah.
and now I take out 1 million books a week. I was wondering, is there a limit here? Actually, it was just perfect. So yeah, I don't know, I think it just instilled a love of libraries very early for me too. Oh, Mary, top that.
I've enjoyed talking with some of the people I've encountered who have been using library services, like someone who was staying at the Y and was sitting on our steps to access the Wi-Fi in off hours.
And I would offer a comment of gratitude for our new director and the broader discussion that we are having as part of our work together here at the board and during committees. Thank you.
I'm going to commend the Troy Public Library on expanding its collection of young adult books and graphic novels because my son is currently reading at 11 years old To Kill a Mockingbird, the graphic novel, which I did not realize was a thing. He is loving it. So it's great, you know. Thank you for all that you offer.
It's like treasure. Well, I recently had a very interesting experience and heartwarming in that I was up at Lansingburg doing story time, and the woman who came in with her grandchild, I had done her daughter's story time, and then she was back with her granddaughters. So that was really nice to see that continuation of love of the library, to bring your kid there.
This is a lot of pressure. Yeah.
It is.
Good feeling about your birthday. And
I-
these meetings are great, so.
You're gonna leave with a smile on your face today.
I won't opine on my like philosophical perspective on the even the existence of libraries. Wouldn't be anything new, and I'm sure I've mentioned it at some point. But what has been at the forefront of my mind is thinking about the future, and specifically the future of this institution. And I think since I joined the board, the future of this specific institution always felt in a very precarious state. And that always concerned me. But with Tim assuming the role of our new executive director, and all of the changes that have happened and are forthcoming, and coupled with the overwhelming amount of positive feedback that I have been receptive to unsolicited about everything Tim has done from the staff, from board members of other organizations, from members of the public I didn't even know. I think the future is bright, and our work is more important than ever. And I'm proud to be doing it, and I don't feel anxious about the future of this institution, probably for the first time since I've served in this role. And that lets me do my job more effectively. So. Thank you.
Whoa. Okay, I'll keep it super fun and light, and just say, that, I continue to feel a lot of gratitude, and it kind of came at a wave at me this evening for the staff of the library. So, you know, our library workers are very, very important. Everything that they do is very important. I see it all the time in my work at the Social Justice Center too, at the Albany Public Library. And so it kind of goes without saying, I don't need to tell anyone here, but particularly to this staff member who put this in the mailbox that I forgot existed again and brought back Ben's ball. So I bring Ben here often, and this is a ball for a toy that he plays with, and it's a whole thing. Anyway, he's going to be very excited to get this ball back, and it's because I mentioned it and someone cared enough to look and find it and do the whole thing, and this just, it means a lot to an almost 2-year-old, so.
That's amazing.
We love the staff.
I'm sorry, you said a mailbox.
Yeah, there's a mailbox.
For-
has a mail.
I can show you where it is.
I've never seen that.
I can show you.
Well, unless you have mail.
Big-
no reason to-
I don't
No,
wanna,
That's
whatever.
That's-
Unless there's a ball. or-
Free
And good info.
learned, it's-
Okay.
Yeah, the whole thing. Anyway, Ben's getting his ball back.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Tim, thank you for.
Great idea.
That's, yeah, that's a very, very good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe it should be at the end.
The end is
Right,
better.
Yeah, I think that it's a nice way to end. I agree.
Speaking of endings. Their motion to adjourn.
Hello.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second a lot tonight, sorry.
All in.
Miss a second.
300 people say it's your turn.
Did you get everybody online?
Yes,
Okay.
that's Becca Smith, right?
It's the same bucket that Sue's lead.
That's what I have as the last one.